Hey, what's going on, guys? This Saturday is UFC 300, Alex Pereira versus Jamahal Hill for the light heavyweight title, and this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction for the main event. I've already done a full card prediction video. If you care to check that out, I will link it down in the description, as well as my full UFC 300 playlist, and I will also link it in the end cards if you want to go check it out after this. But this main event, and this card in general, I cannot wait for UFC 300. And you know what's funny, and I've realized, and maybe I've just missed it, it seems like now that we're in UFC 300 fight week, all that hate from a month, 2 months ago, where everyone was hating on UFC 300 because of unrealistic expectations, it seems like it's kind of died off, because undoubtedly UFC 300 is the best fight card on paper the UFC has ever put together. And this main event is incredible. You have Alex Pereira, Jamahal Hill, both elite of the elite strikers. And you have a decent storyline too. I mean, Alex Pereira, one of his best friends and coaches, Glover Teixeira, his retirement fight was getting the brakes beat off of him by none other than Jamahal Hill. And Jamahal Hill won the light heavyweight title on short notice against former champion Glover Teixeira. And then he tore his Achilles. And he's been sitting on the sidelines for a year and a half. And that's the big question mark in this fight. How healthy is Jamahal Hill? And also, he kind of took it on short notice because the UFC was scrambling around, fumbling for a main event for UFC 300. Jamahal Hill kind of hinted he wasn't going to be ready, and he was probably going to fight at 301 in Brazil, which would have been a crazy main event for 301. Then all of a sudden, Dana White just says, it's Alex Pereira, Jamahal Hill. And we're like, okay. And then Jamahal Hill says, oh, I just found out yesterday. So that does kind of leave a few question marks for me with Jamahal Hill, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. But I cannot wait for this matchup. First off, let's start with the tail of the tape. You look at Alex Pereira, he's 9-2. Jamahal Hill is 12-1. Alex Pereira is clearly the champion. Hill is ranked number 1 in the UFC official rankings. Pereira is 36. Hill is 32. Pereira is 6'4". Hill is 6'4". Pereira has an 80-inch reach, and Jamahal Hill has a 79-inch reach. So very similar, just a youth advantage for Jamahal Hill. And honestly, when I look at this matchup, I look at a fight that, if Jamahal Hill wasn't coming off a long layoff from the UFC, from elite competition, if Jamahal Hill wasn't coming back from a catastrophic injury, for me it would be a no-brainer to pick Jamahal Hill. But because of the long layoff, because of the Achilles injury, that's a massive question mark for this fight. But the more I think about it, I can't let just a long layoff and an injury that he says he's healthy from, which I have my debates, because he's like, oh, the UFC offered me a bag to headline UFC 300. I can't let that stop me from picking Jamahal Hill, because without that long layoff and injury, I'm 100% picking Jamahal Hill. And that's why I'm still picking Jamahal Hill. I'm going to pick Jamahal Hill by 3rd round TKO, or honestly probably KO. I think he probably stiffens Alex Pereira. I know that Jamahal Hill, I see people mention, oh, Glover Teixeira is nowhere near the striker of Alex Pereira, and Glover Teixeira, look at the damage he put on Jamahal Hill. I went back and rewatched that fight in its entirety. Jamahal Hill put on a masterclass performance against Glover Teixeira on 1 month's notice. On 1 month's notice. Let's go back in time. You go back to UFC 282 in December. It was supposed to be Yuri Prochazka, Glover Teixeira 2. Yuri injures his shoulder, pulls out of the fight. Glover Teixeira ends up turning down, I think, Magomed Ankalaev. So therefore, they do Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev for a vacant title, because Yuri vacated the title. You get a draw in that fight. Literally at the post-fight, they announce Glover Teixeira, Jamahal Hill in January. Now, I seen somebody recently say to me, Joey, Jamahal Hill had a fight scheduled. He still had a full camp. No, Jamahal Hill was scheduled to fight Anthony Smith in March. So that didn't have him prepared for a month later in January. Now, he still had a month to prepare, but I still think you have to grade the performance against Glover Teixeira on a little bit of a curve. And then on top of that, the damage that Jamahal Hill took against Glover Teixeira was primarily in the 2nd round. All that eye damage to, I believe it was the right eye, was all done in the 2nd round by Glover Teixeira, because Jamahal Hill hurt him badly, swarmed him, showed him no respect at all. And Jamahal Hill got clipped up with, I think, 2 left hooks, which is ironic because Alex Pereira's primary weapon is the left hook. But other than that, Jamahal Hill dominated this fight. He absolutely dominated Glover Teixeira. And I know Glover Teixeira is older, but you have to take into account Jamahal Hill put on a masterclass performance against Glover Teixeira while worrying about the takedown threat And on top of that, took it on short notice, and his stamina looked unbelievable. So he had a bunch of things kind of going against him in that fight against Glover Teixeira, and he still put on a performance of a lifetime. And that's why I'm going with him against Alex Pereira. Same thing here. He's coming back from the Achilles injury. He's coming back from the long layoff to the UFC. I know those factors are against him, and they do kind of make me question it a little bit. But still, I don't think Jamahal Hill's dumb enough. I know he's crazy. I know he's salty. I know he's a bit delusional. I don't think he's dumb enough to truly come back unless he believes he's 100% healthy, because then he's going to lose, and then, then what? If his Achilles isn't 100% healthy, then he's going to end up losing, and then he's going to have nobody to blame but himself because he decided to come back from an injury. So I'm looking at that Glover Teixeira fight, and I'm like, you know what? He had a bunch of factors against him in that fight. I think he pulls it off against Alex Pereira, because Alex Pereira, I know people think I'm some type of Alex Pereira hater, and, I've seen people say, Joey, you're always picking against Alex Pereira. I think Alex Pereira's had 7 fights in the UFC. I'm not looking at his record right now, right in front of me. I think I'm 4-3. I picked him against Andreas Michailidis. I picked him against Bruno Silva. I picked him to lose against Israel Adesanya twice, so I got one of those right. I picked him to beat Sean Strickland, which was before the Adesanya fights. And then I picked him to lose to Jan Blachowicz. That was a robbery, by the way. Jan Blachowicz won that fight. We'll talk about that more in a second. And then I picked him to lose to Yuri, and Yuri was winning that fight and lost. Not that he was dominating. I'm not saying that by any means. I know someone's going to twist my words. But Yuri Prochazka beat Alex Pereira in the first round, out-grappled him, landed some good shots on the feet. Second round was really, it seemed like the momentum was starting to really go in Yuri's favor. He was getting aggressive. He was getting crazy. Got caught by a left hook, shoots in on a takedown, and ends up getting hammer fist and elbowed into kind of a KO, but it was like a super flash KO, or it was a bit of an early stoppage. So honestly, I don't regret any of those picks. Even the Adesanya first fight, where I switched my early pick of Pereira to Adesanya, Adesanya was winning the majority of that fight and then got caught in the 5th round and lost. But you go back and you look at a lot of these performances, and one thing I've been hammering home about Alex Pereira forever is his striking defense is not as good as his striking offense. You go back and you look at some of these fights. Yuri Prochazka, I know he's wild and crazy, but far from the most technical striker. He's tagging up Alex Pereira, even stunned him a little bit, I believe, in the first round. You look at the fight before that against Jan Blachowicz. First off, Alex Pereira completely gassed in that fight. So did Jan. They were in Salt Lake City. But I thought Jan Blachowicz won that fight. And I know people are saying, well, he did nothing with the grappling. Jan outstruck him in the 3rd round. And both of them were completely gassed. And Jan also dominated him in the grappling in the first round. Took his back with ease. And Jan is not known for his grappling at all. So he gets that win there. Then the fight before that got brutally slept by Israel Adesanya. The fight before that, he beat Israel Adesanya but was losing and even got taken down, I think it was in the 3rd round, and made Israel Adesanya look like Khabib Nurmagomedov on the ground, was dominating, had wrist control, was just not letting him get up no matter what, and was easily controlling him on the ground. Now, I think Pereira's takedown defense has improved, but off of his back, his get-ups are not that great, and he can be controlled quite a bit. Now, Jamahal Hill has said, well, I'm not going to grapple in this fight. I think if Jamahal Hill starts getting tagged up, I think he will undoubtedly mix in the grappling, and I think he can definitely out-grapple Alex Pereira. If I was confident that Jamahal Hill was going to mix in the grappling enough, this is a no-brainer pick for me. Because while Pereira does have good takedown defense, and he has improved on his takedown defense, it's not great. Bruno Silva was taking him down, who's primarily a striker, who's just getting out-grappled by Chris Weidman, the eye-poke machine who deserves to be cut from the UFC. But Pereira's takedown defense has improved. It's not great. And once he gets taken down, he can be controlled. And if Pereira, or if Hill mixes that in on Pereira, the striking is going to open up even more. Now, I know what people say. They say, well, Jamahal Hill's biggest weakness is the fact that he absorbs a lot of leg kicks. You look in his previous fights, even against Glover Teixeira, he was eating quite a few leg kicks against Glover Teixeira. You look back against the Thiago Santos fight, absorbed some leg kicks there. You look back at the Johnny Walker fight, that ended rather quickly. I don't think he ate too many leg kicks there. But you look over the course of his career, he ate a lot of leg kicks. His last loss was 3 years ago against Paul Craig, where Paul Craig pulls guard and ends up finding him in a submission. But you also have to take into account in this fight that Jamahal Hill primarily fights southpaw. That lead leg kick from Pereira isn't as open for Jamahal Hill on the southpaw. Now, don't get me wrong, Pereira not having that outside leg kick, okay, but he'll still batter the inside leg kick. But also, you look at Jamahal Hill's fights, he can fight very well out of either stance. He can switch to orthodox, fight well. He can switch to southpaw, which he primarily fights in. He fights well. And also, one of the most underrated parts of Jamahal Hill's game, he has nasty kicks. He was slamming that head kick home against Glover Teixeira, landed it multiple times, wobbled Glover Teixeira multiple times with the head kick. Has nasty body kicks as well, and it comes from either stance. So while Pereira might batter that leg a little bit, and I do wonder, is it compromised a little bit with that Achilles? That's, only time will tell with that. I think Jamahal Hill is coming into this fight. He knows that he has to worry about two things: the leg kicks of Alex Pereira and the left hook of Alex Pereira. I don't want to say Pereira's one-dimensional, but that's really, if you can address those two things, if you can address the low calf kicks of Alex Pereira and the left hook, which I know easier said than done, but that's it. Pereira doesn't have a grappling threat. Okay, does he have power in his right hand? Yes, but he's not historically known for his power. And then also, people act like Pereira's just deadening people with the left hook. We haven't really seen that in the UFC. Standing TKO, early TKO stoppage against Israel Adesanya. The Yuri fight was elbows to the side of the head while Yuri was in on a takedown. Now, he did get hurt by the left hook. Jan ate the left hook multiple times. Jamahal Hill's never been rocked or finished. I mean, his only loss is to Paul Craig by his submission. Jamahal Hill's striking is so good, and also, he throws a lot of straight punches. And one thing you see when you watch Jamahal Hill fight, he loves pawing out that jab of that lead hand, pawing it out, blinding his opponent with it, and then following up with like a left cross or a left hook. He does that all the time, and we've seen Pereira get in trouble with that against a guy like Israel Adesanya. So while, don't get me wrong, I can see Pereira winning this fight, I just think Jamahal Hill's a bad matchup for Alex Pereira. He's well-rounded. Will he mix in the grappling? I believe that he will mix it in a little bit, but I do worry about him being a little bit prideful and saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna grapple at all against Alex Pereira. I'm gonna beat him with my striking." I believe that he can. I mean, Jamahal Hill can fight out of either stance, has good kicks, has a good variety of attacks, and he has to worry about that leg kick. Honestly, if he can address that leg kick, I think he blows Alex Pereira out of the water. And also, and I talked about it earlier with Glover Teixeira and the damage. Jamahal Hill, when he gets hit, you watch all his fights, whether it's Johnny Walker, Thiago Santos, or Glover Teixeira recently. There's the three most recent fights. When he's getting hit, it's because he's showing absolutely no respect for his opponent's striking. Go back and watch it if you don't believe me. He's like, you know what? I got this fight in the bag. I'm going to rush forward and just sling crazy wild combinations on my opponent. That is when he gets clipped up. That's the only time he got touched by Glover Teixeira. If he fought a little bit smarter against Glover Teixeira, he never gets touched, not once. Maybe a few ground and pound shots. That's it. But doesn't get touched on the feet at all. Johnny Walker, super explosive, dangerous. Even Brazilian as well. Didn't even touch Jamahal Hill. And also, Jamahal Hill, you don't think of him as it. He's a pressure fighter. And guess where Alex Pereira struggles with? He struggles with when his opponent pressures him. Alex Pereira is really good when he's moving forward. And don't get me wrong, he has good counters. But when he's being backed up, he doesn't have the same sting on his punches. He doesn't land with the same accuracy when he's being pressured. And Jamahal Hill has very good pressure. So I think you add all these things together. The fact that Jamahal Hill can fight out of either stance. The fact that Jamahal Hill has a good variety of attacks, primarily his kicks. The fact that Jamahal Hill, he rolls well with shots. He never really gets clipped clean. He's never been KO'd. He doesn't have chin issues. And I think Pereira's power is a bit overrated as well. So I think that Jamahal Hill, even if he gets tagged with that left hook a couple times, I think he eats it. And then Jamahal Hill is going to be popping in 1-2s left and right. Jamahal Hill is going to be tagging Alex Pereira on the feet. Jamahal Hill, if he starts eating too many leg kicks or too many combinations, he's going to mix in the grappling, mix in the clinch work, which I think he's far superior than Alex Pereira in the grappling, in the clinch. I think he's far better. And then also, Jamahal Hill's a big guy. Alex Pereira, a lot of his career, especially in the UFC, you look at him, he's had a size advantage over most of the middleweights. I don't like to use the term weight bully. If you make weight, you make weight. But if there's one guy who's a true weight bully, it's Alex Pereira. Look at him in the size comparison to Sean Strickland or Israel Adesanya. So Jamahal Hill is going to be a similar size to Alex Pereira, if not bigger. And look at his performance against Glover Teixeira on 1 month's notice. 1 month's notice came in against Glover Teixeira, who had the takedown threat. literally wouldn't have touched him if Jamahal Hill didn't look for a finish and get way too aggressive, which I don't think he makes the same mistake against Alex Pereira. I think he'll pressure, but I think he'll be a little bit measured on his approach. I think he'll have his left hand will be tucked right at his chin, waiting for that counter left hook from Alex Pereira. And also, people talk about the long layoff. I've even talked about the long layoff for Jamahal Hill. People forget that Jamahal Hill got a tune-up fight. He brutally KO'd his brother back at Thanksgiving. So he had that tune-up fight. He's coming back from a catastrophic injury. He's being thrown right back into the fire in the UFC, but he does have that tune-up fight under his belt where he knocked his brother's teeth out when he sucker punched him in front of his wife and kids. So that you have to take that into account as well. I think Pereira is being overhyped a bit by the MMA community. I think the Pereira fans have gotten way too high on Alex Pereira. And I think a technical striker who has a good 1-2, who throws a lot of straight shots, who can mix in the grappling, who has good power, like Jamahal Hill, I'm perfectly describing Jamahal Hill, I think they get it done against Alex Pereira. And that's why I'm picking Jamahal Hill by third round TKO. Also, another thing, I don't trust Alex Pereira's cardio. I don't trust his cardio. He was exhausted in the Jan Blachowicz fight. He was tired even in the Israel Adesanya fight where he got the finish in the 5th round. He was starting to look tired in the Yuri Prochazka fight. It's a bit of a stretch, but I could see, I thought the momentum was really shifting and it even was more apparent on rewatch. And Jamahal Hill, we know he has good cardio. People make fun of he's kind of, pudgy for a fighter. He has good cardio. On 1 month's notice, he went 5 hard rounds with Glover Teixeira, where his output was straight up insane, tagging Glover Teixeira. So I think Jamahal Hill finds a KO shot in this fight, and I think he finds it after Alex Pereira starts to slow down a bit. I think if Alex Pereira wants to win this fight, it's going to have to be based off the leg kicks, but he doesn't have that outside leg kick there. He only has the inside leg kick, which I think is a little less effective for Alex Pereira. So I think you're going to see Jamahal Hill switching stances. I think he's going to be slamming that head kick. We saw Israel Adesanya come close and even sometimes break through the guard with a heavy head kick against Alex Pereira, through a few of them throughout both their fights. I think Jamahal Hill can take advantage of that in this fight. I think he's going to be really good on the feet, and I think he's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder. And I think he's going to mix in the grappling as well, just enough. Maybe he's not going to come out with an all-out grappling game plan, but he's going to mix it in just enough to make Alex Pereira think about it, and Pereira's going to be waiting and getting pressured back up against the fence. I think Hill's going to really come out with a chip on his shoulder and really pressure Pereira, because if you watch any of his fights, one of his biggest weaknesses is when he gets backed up against the fence. When he is the one backing up. He does well when he's pressuring forward, but when he's backing up, he's nowhere near as good. He does have that left-hand counter that he can put anyone to sleep with, but he doesn't fight. It's not an optimal circumstance for him to be backed up. And Jamahal Hill, I think, will pressure, will dictate the pace, but Jamahal Hill's also pretty good fighting backwards as well. So he doesn't have to come all out nonstop pressure. So I think Jamahal Hill gets it done. I'm actually going to say, and I don't think I said this in my full card prediction video, I'm going to pick Jamahal Hill by third round KO, and it's going to be started with a head kick. I think the head kick is going to put Pereira out. Maybe he lands a few ground and pound shots that are unnecessary or super necessary, depending on how you want to look at it. But I'm going to say Jamahal Hill, from the southpaw stance, fires a nasty head kick, hurts Pereira bad or sleeps Pereira in the third round as he's starting to get a little bit more tired, as he's starting to slow down a bit, and Jamahal Hill's really finding his timing, mixing in, just blasting him with the 1-2. He's going to mix in a nasty head kick. He's also going to be mixing in body kicks as well, and he's going to find that head kick in the third round and put Alex Pereira out in the third round. So I'm going Jamahal Hill, third round KO. And that's it. I'm picking Jamahal Hill to get it done, to win back his light heavyweight title. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to check out my full card predictions in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.